This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
This is Kevin Harlan. Black Friday game days coming to Prime, and it's gonna be huge. Black Friday football is back with Bears-Eagles at 3 p.m. Eastern, followed by an Emirates NBA Cup doubleheader, Bucks-Knicks at 7 p.m., and then Mavs-Lakers at 10 p.m. And the whole day starts with the Capital One Skins game as 4 elite PGA golfers hit the links with $4 million on the line. Don't miss a moment of Black Friday game day. The Capital One Skins game at 9 a.m., Bears-Eagles at 3, Bucks-Knicks at 7, Mavs-Lakers at 10, and it's all only on Prime.
At Lowe's, before the holidays is the perfect time for upgrades and upkeep. During Black Friday, get up to 50% off select major appliances and buy more to save more with up to an additional 25% off when you bundle select major appliances. Plus, grab select DeWalt 20-volt max drill or impact driver kits for just $99. Lowe's. We help, you save. Valid through 12/3. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details.
And later that day, I was teaching in the classroom. I had somebody come in and say, can you just step outside for 10 minutes while we speak to your class? So I was like, yeah, sure, like absolutely, not a problem. Went out, came back, and as I opened the door, I heard them say, do you feel safe in the classroom with your teacher? And I was like, that's a bit odd. It's like, well, why would you not feel safe with me?
Hello, welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, a free safe space for people to share and learn from others' experiences with mental health and addictions. I'm Todd Rennebaum, a suicide attempt survivor and a recovering substance abuser. I've got a question for you. Have you ever heard of schizotypal? Typal. I don't even know how to say it. I bet you haven't. So we're going to learn about that today from my guest, Katja. Katja. Apparently I can't say that either. She's also been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and she is part of a YouTube podcast group called the PBD Bunch. I always want to say brunch. We're going to talk about her journey and what schizotypal is, or well, what it is for her, and we're going to talk about her new book. As always, you can go into the show notes and find some links about my guests and about me. But without further ado, I give you Katja.
So I am particularly blessed because I have borderline and schizotypal personality disorder. So I actually have two, although the borderline is classified as in remission. So it's not as much of a big deal as it used to be, like it's manageable. The STPD is not really in the same category, to be honest. Like that is much more of a challenge.
So BPD, it's like other personality disorders. Like you say it's in remission because you're treating it. I have addiction issues, but it's being treated, but it's always potentially there. So if you stop treatment, it could come back. Whereas schizotypal, that's more of a, so there's like software and hardware.
Yeah, so schizotypal, it's such an awkward one to describe because it is a personality disorder according to the DSM-5.
Oh, it is?
It is, yeah, but it's also a schizospectrum disorder, and the ICD-11 actually doesn't treat it as a personality disorder. It's a psychosis spectrum disorder, so depending on which manual you use, it's either a personality disorder or it's not. So, yeah, it's really confusing for everyone involved.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Even me, everyone involved. So can you explain the schizotypal? Explain it to me and how it affects you and how it affects other people.
Yeah, sure. So it's a personality disorder in theory, if you're using the DSM-5. It's a cluster A disorder. So with personality disorders, they're in 3 distinct clusters. So there's cluster A, cluster B, which tends to be the one that everyone's heard of, and then cluster C. So cluster B is your borderline, histrionic, narcissistic and antisocial, but no one really seems to know much about the others. So my cluster is known as the odd and eccentric cluster. So it's schizoid, schizotypal and paranoid personality disorder that are in that cluster. It's such a weird disorder to describe because no matter how many times I've asked how to describe it, I never really know how to describe it to kind of capture the essence of what it is, because it really is like such a crazy disorder to try and describe. It is on the psychosis spectrum, so it does cross over quite a lot with schizospectrum disorders. To that end, you have a lot of psychotic-like symptoms. So it's kind of like being in psychosis, but you're always aware that it's not real, which sounds really odd because surely if you know it's not real, it's not a problem. But it does create quite a lot of anxiety when you're not really sure if it's real or not. So it can be things like having delusional thoughts, hallucinations. So for me, it's more kind of like taste and smell and things like that. Perceptual disturbances are a really common experience in STPD. So it could be things like the floor rising up to meet you, or the wall looking like it's bending inwards, like hearing different noises. For me, I tend to hear words wrapped up in different noises. There's also flat affect as well, so struggling to express emotion, sort of facially, struggling to recognise emotions. Within that as well, you've also got magical thinking, so kind of linking completely unrelated ideas and concepts and relating them back to you. The best example really I can give of that is I see signs in things. So like just basically reading far too much into things that are going on and making connections that aren't really there. But then a big part of it as well is the interpersonal side. So social withdrawal, social isolation, struggling with social cues. The best way to describe it in sort of layman's terms is kind of like a mashup between schizophrenia and autism, which isn't really that accurate, but to kind of explain it in a way that people understand, I guess that's the easiest two to draw parallels from.
So that magical thinking, it's like sometimes you might think it's like you're actually talking to God, or I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
See what I mean? It's so hard.
Yeah, because I think I've only talked to one other person about schizotypal. She explained the magical thinking part, and I thought I got it, but now I can't think of how she explained it.
Yeah, it's kind of like things that could be written off as coincidence, but you read far too much into them. So the example that I always use is reading is a big one for me. Like I'll be reading a book and I will get this really odd feeling that the book is written about me or something that I've done, and it's sending me a message that people know what I've done. And obviously, like, it depends on the book. You know, like if I'm reading something about serial killers, that's obviously quite concerning, but it will spark a chain of thought where I'm like, have I done something? Have I killed somebody? And I haven't realised, like, which is ludicrous. And this is kind of where that self-awareness comes in with it being psychotic-like, because I know I haven't done it, but that feeling of unease and anxiety will not go away. So it's kind of like having one foot in reality and one foot out of it. It's really... yeah, it's odd. Like, pick a side.
I've talked to people with schizoaffective disorder, like bipolar with schizoaffective. Schizoaffective sounds similar in visual hallucination like that. Is there kind of some crossover, some overlap with schizoaffective disorder and typal?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, obviously with a prefix of schizo, you're going to get certain commonalities amongst experiences and things. It's really interesting because who I wrote the book with, Kay, is the co-founder of the project, and she's got schizophrenia, and actually we can kind of see a lot of parallels. So for her, she has a lot of persecutory delusions and hallucinations, and hers tend to focus more on the government. But for me, it's kind of like around conspiracy theories and things like that, because although I don't believe in a lot of conspiracy theories myself, being around people talking about conspiracy theories can sort of pull the pin on it exploding into magical thinking. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of crossover, and I think in some ways it's a bit of a benefit to know that what you're experiencing isn't real, in the sense that, you know, like you're not going to go into full psychosis, although sometimes schizotypal can be a prodrome for schizophrenia, but not always. But I think certainly speaking to Kay, it's been a really difficult situation for her, because when she's in active psychosis, like, there is just no awareness of what's going on whatsoever. So in a way, yeah, I do kind of count my blessings with that, but equally, again, it's that kind of that constant feeling of being on edge because you're not sure if it's real or not.
So with this being a personality disorder, depending who you talk to, is this something that's kind of like evolves around trauma? Or
So the BPD, I would say definitely. It's quite well known that that is usually where it comes from, not 100% of the time, but usually some form of childhood trauma. STPD is sort of more loosely linked to trauma, so it's got quite a big genetic component. And I do have schizophrenia that runs down the paternal side of the family, so we're working on the assumption it's probably come from that side of the family. But in terms of the BPD, there is definitely childhood trauma there, but it doesn't originate from within my immediate family. So yeah, I think, trauma is such a big area, isn't it? And there's so many experiences that can fall into trauma. So I think, yeah, it probably has had a bit of an impact, but I don't know if it's as big an impact as it does have on some people with BPD.
and is it a somewhat of a comorbidity of BPD or not really? It just happens to you just happen to have both.
Yeah, it's not really that common from what I understand. I was actually talking about this on another podcast earlier in the week, and the only example that I actually have of somebody having both of them together is apparently it's Jeffrey Dahmer. So that's not really, yeah, it's like, in terms of representation, it's not the best, really. But if you, it could be better.
It's not Churchill or something.
I know. But if you look into examples of STPD, like, I've really struggled to find human examples. Like, there's plenty of fictional characters, like Jack Sparrow is one whose name is out there quite a lot, Willy Wonka, like, not really people that I find super relatable on account of the fact that they don't exist. So yeah, it is a struggle to kind of find anyone really. So when I had the diagnoses, obviously BPD, like, people know more about it, there's more out there. STPD, I was kind of out there on my own. But what I will say is the forums that you find on the internet for STPD tend to be really nice and supportive, which is great because you don't always get that with BPD. But yeah, there's definitely a distinct lack of community online for STPD.
Yeah, it almost seems like, I don't want to say it sounds fun, because you have this little psychosis thing, but it's also, you have it, so you just, oh, that was neat, you just play along with it or whatever. Like, I don't know, it seems less less negative, I guess.
It does, but I think with STPD, like, the main problem is that it's so distracting, because even though it's not real, you're still experiencing it. So, like, I constantly have perceptual disturbances, so it's really hard to try and filter that out so that people can't tell that there's something going on. And especially for me, being a teacher in the classroom, like, when it's going on when I'm trying to teach, it's a nightmare trying to block it out so I could just get my job done without the kids figuring it out. So yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge, I think, with STPD, because I don't have any control over when a lot of the psychotic like stuff happens, whereas with BPD, I know what my triggers are. I can kind of predict when that's going to come into play a little bit more and have strategies for it. With STPD, it just feels like you're riding that wave constantly.
So, I mean, you do suffer from it. There is suffering because it's this unpredictable thing that's constantly you have to work at and stay undistracted from.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it dangerous sometimes, like when you're driving or something, if some of these things happen, or are you just used to it now?
It's definitely a bit of a challenge. Like, I do have to declare STPD for the purposes of my driving license. So you do sort of have to go through the rigmarole of kind of informing people, and then they decide if the severity of it is bad enough. I mean, I'm quite fortunate in that I don't really suffer a lot with visual disturbances. Like, they're pretty rare for me. But even so, I am really quite cautious around driving anyway. So I don't really like having passengers it sounds really horrible, but they're distracting in themselves. And when you're trying to concentrate on the road and make sure you're blocking anything else out, like, I don't really like having anyone in the vehicle with me. And I don't tend to drive on motorways just because it's harder to pull over if something does happen. So I can do it, but it's definitely limiting. And I think there's more considerations than there would be for the average person with things like that. It's like a continuous risk assessment of the activity that you're doing. So should this happen, what am I going to do? What is my contingency? So yeah, it's just a little bit more thought, I think, than the average person has to put into everyday activities.
Well, it's nice that you have that self-awareness, at least. I mean, it sucks that you have to constantly have a plan B. But for the safety of yourself and for everyone around you, I guess, it's nice that you have that self-awareness and you know what you're capable of at that moment and or not. So good on you for that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's annoying.
Yeah, I can imagine. Are you then easily kind of like manipulated, or someone could really screw with you, I'm assuming? Yeah, convince you something is real when it isn't, or like really take advantage of you possibly?
I mean, potentially. I do have strategies that do and don't work, I guess. So one of the things that I tend to do is, I mean, even last night, like, I was freaking out because although I live in what is essentially the outskirts of a city, we have got really nice green areas. We've got a nature reserve at the back of our house. And I was walking my dogs and I could hear what I thought was screaming. So I recorded it on my phone, played it back, could still hear it. So I sent it to my husband and said, can you just confirm whether or not this noise is on the recording? Like, can you hear it? And he messaged back and he was like, it's a fox's mating call. And I was like, oh, it's fine. But like, sometimes in certain situations, like, the noise genuinely isn't there. And if I'm outside, I tend to take my dogs with me because I can tell by their reaction if they can hear something. So, for example, when I took my dogs out, their ears were pricking up and going back. So I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure that this is a genuine noise, but I'm just going to check. But there are situations, obviously, in life where I don't have my dogs, where it's not practical for me to record what's going on and fact check with somebody else. So yeah, there's definitely been times where I've sort of fallen into that trap of not being able to check and then become quite paranoid. But, you know, sometimes that paranoia is what keeps you safe, right? So I don't want to discount it completely because you never know. But yeah, it's just annoying. It's such an annoying disorder.
But if you were younger and you were dating someone and they knew the situation, they could maybe like convince you of things that aren't happening and then be able to possibly take advantage of you.
It's interesting that you've said that, because it actually, believe it or not, it works the other way around. So because paranoia and suspicion are sort of hallmarks of STPD, if anything, I tend to go into dating situations being more hypervigilant and more paranoid about people's intentions. So in some ways it kind of like helps a little bit, but then, you know, when I met my husband, it was at the other extreme where he didn't think that I was interested because I was so cold towards him, because I was essentially like paranoid about his intentions. So I guess it's about getting that balance, right? And I don't always get it right because my mind will go to the most paranoid place it possibly can, jump to the furthest conclusion, and sometimes it's very difficult to rationalize that. So again, you know, it's something that has in the past kept me safe, but also it's limited me as well, because it's kind of put the barrier between me and that person, because I'm not seeing them, I'm seeing paranoia and suspicions, and that's then clouding my judgment. So yeah, it's definitely cost me opportunities, I would say, in the past.
How long ago were you diagnosed, and how long ago did you date your husband?
So I was diagnosed when I was with my husband, so it's after we got married. I was diagnosed in 2021 with BPD and then 2022 with schizotypal. Obviously, you don't get diagnosed with a personality disorder and cure it in a year. Like, that isn't really what happens. But I think what happened was they picked up on the BPD first. And I think in some ways they were maybe looking for the BPD. But with the STPD, that came a year later, when after I got my BPD diagnosis, a lot of the stuff hadn't gone away. So that made it a bit easier. Now, for me, I was really shocked when I got the BPD diagnosis, because to me it was quite obvious that there was something going on that was schizospectrum. So when they said BPD, I was quite shocked because you can sometimes have transient psychotic symptoms with BPD, but mine wasn't linked to stress and it wasn't intermittent. It was pretty much constant at that time. So I was really surprised when they said BPD because I could not see that in myself at that time. Whereas the STPD, when I got that diagnosis, I was like, right, okay, yeah, this makes a lot more sense. So yeah, I think with the BPD, like obviously having both, it kind of distorts the disorders to the point where they're not really that obvious because the STPD kind of hides the BPD and the BPD kind of hides the STPD. So yeah, I think being diagnosed, like the psychiatrists definitely had their work cut out there because they're not natural bedfellows. Like as disorders, in some ways they seem quite opposite, but in other ways they're very similar. So yeah, it was definitely a real challenge to get those diagnoses.
You must be quite happy with your doctors then? Like you think they got it right?
I think I had a lot of skepticism around the BPD, and I think that was because this is going to sound so awful, especially to anyone who's got BPD, but when I was diagnosed, I only really knew BPD from the stereotypes. So I remember when I was diagnosed and they said, we think it's BPD, I was like, but I've never stalked my ex. I've never smashed up someone's car. And obviously that's ridiculous because that's a stereotype, right? I actually know so many people with BPD and none of them have ever done anything like that.
Yet.
Well, I know, yeah. I might do it one day. You never know. Yeah, I was quite surprised. And it was only really when they explained that my symptoms of BPD probably show up a little bit differently because I'm not a naturally extroverted person, and that just might be personality. It might be the influence of the STPD. Nobody really knows. But for things like fear of abandonment, I wouldn't cling to people. I wouldn't physically stop them from leaving, but I would be completely hypervigilant to signs that someone was leaving, and then I'd do it first. So it's fear of abandonment, but it's kind of presenting in a different way. And the same with anger. Like I don't, generally speaking, have really big outbursts of anger, but what I will do is be rude and passive aggressive, which is still anger, but it's taken a different form. So when I was reading through the diagnostic criteria, I was like, well, that's not me, that's not me, that's not me. And the psychiatrist was like, no, this is you, but it's just not as easy to recognise. Yeah, with the BPD, that was definitely a shock, and that took quite a long time to come to terms with. Whereas with STPD, you know, there's nothing really out there on it. Like, there's no opinion on STPD. No one really thinks that you're abusive with STPD like they do with BPD. So there wasn't really any stigma to kind of fight back against, really, because no one knew what it was. So I had the time really to just work through it myself and figure out how I felt about it. And it was, yeah, just a very, very different experience compared to the BPD diagnosis.
Yeah, I guess you're kind of lucky in a way that not a lot of people have the STP.
STPD.
Oh, right, D. I forgot the D.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no negative stuff to like get more paranoid about. I have a feeling a lot of people that are diagnosed with BPD probably go through that same kind of thought process you did, or any cluster B, you're probably out there to like look it up. Yeah, it
does really, suffer. Well, all of cluster B really suffers from such a bad reputation and a bad image in general, I think. Although arguably you could say that BPD is improving. Like, I don't think it has the negative connotations that it once did, say 10, 15 years ago. But yeah, I think, like that, when you go into a psychiatrist's office and you're going to get a diagnosis, like that's top of the list of things that you don't really want to be hearing. So yeah, I can't say I was thrilled. Yeah.
Well, and I think the stigma is changing because of people like you who are doing the work and having the BPD Bunch podcast. That's one of the nice things about social media too. A lot of people are coming out and talking more openly about their diagnosis to change stigmas. One thing I've learned through my experience with mental health and addictions is you never know what you need to hear until you hear it. Make sure to rate and review on Apple and to tell as many people as you can about the podcast so others can hear something they need to hear from one of my guests. After all, this is a free mental health service, which is a rare thing, so why not share with as many people as you can? Hey, I gotta tell you, having a podcast isn't all that easy, especially in this day and age when trends and things are changing so quickly. I can't keep up with it, and honestly, I don't like doing it. I like the creating part. That's why I reached out to Carrie Hyman. She's the genius behind Your Voice Consulting. With more than 25 years of experience in communications and engagement, Carrie helps organizations connect with purpose and clarity. Known for her practical approach and steady leadership, she's built lasting relationships across industries and communities, guiding teams to communicate with confidence, empathy, and impact. And I can tell you, she is a long-term good friend of mine, and all of that is 100% true. So if you have an organization or a corporation of any kind, and you're spinning your tires, or you're needing some extra help, some advice, I'm telling you right now, go to yourvoiceconsulting.com and contact Carrie.
AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
So with the STPD, is there any kind of treatment or meds, or can it be treated and then go have a normal life, or is it just kind of something you just have to live with?
So this is a really hard question to answer because, yes, I assume you can treat it. However, I haven't actually been offered any treatment for either of my personality disorders. So both times I was diagnosed and I was given medication, and that was kind of it, really. Like, I was never offered anything else. There was talk when I was diagnosed with STPD about talking therapy, but that never really came to fruition. And I think in the UK, it's quite difficult because unless you're at crisis point or you have really severe symptoms that are massively affecting your life, massively affecting the people around you, you kind of get bumped to the bottom of the list. And I think that's really what happened with me. So on the surface of it, if you look at me objectively, I have a career, I work full time, I have a family, I function pretty well in society. But I think what hasn't been taken into consideration is the fact that a hell of a lot of that comes from masking, and having to mask so much is really, really tiring. So I think one of the things that I really struggled with, especially with STPD and flat affect, is when I'm really struggling or if I am at crisis, it's not always very obvious because with STPD, I can't physically show it. Like, I can't provide the necessary amounts of emotion to open the gates to treatment. So there's been times when I've spoken about really traumatic things. And because I've been so flat emotionally, I think people have just assumed that it's been dealt with when it hasn't. It's just that the way that I present myself kind of misleads people in a lot of ways because I don't have an abundance of feeling and emotion to kind of make my point. Like, there was a point probably a couple of years ago when I was in hospital and I was really unwell with psychotic-like experiences, and I was sitting there just having like a really nice chat with the nurse, just like any ordinary conversation really. And I kept saying, I do feel like I am, like struggling with thoughts of wanting to take my own life. But because I wasn't crying, because I wasn't, all over the place, I was very calm, very composed. They were like, you're fine. Like, we'll get you an appointment to see someone in 5 months. And I was like, no, I really need you to take me seriously now. But because I can't give people what they want, it's really difficult to get my point across. And that's not even just in crisis situations. That's in everyday life, like people will tell me something and I know they're expecting a reaction from me. So I have to consciously think about performing my emotions because otherwise my reactions come across as really insincere. Like, for example, if someone told me that someone close to them died, I understand that I need to show an emotion to them to make them feel better, even though to me it feels inauthentic. Like, obviously I am really sorry that that's happened to them, but it won't show on my face. So if I'm completely stony faced and saying, I'm really sorry that happened to you, like, I understand from like social awareness what I need to do, but it just doesn't come naturally. It's not inherent.
I wonder, it's that when you get that flat effect or effect.
Affect. It's an A. Yeah. It's an A, yeah.
Okay. Is it kind of when you are just like exhausted with trying to live with these personality disorders, or is it a separate thing? Like it just happens?
Yeah, it's just like a general demeanor. If anything, it's the other way around. I have to work really hard to show emotion, primarily just to make people feel comfortable, because I am aware that when I am flat, it creates a sense of unease in the other person because they don't know what I'm thinking. It also comes across as quite rude at times as well, which is unintentional, but I understand the reason why. But yeah, it's just very much a part of masking for me. Like even in the BPD bunch, when I talk about it, that's performative to a degree because no one wants to see someone flat on the BPD bunch, especially when you've got Zanny, right? Like Zanny is like the life and soul of the party. So yeah, like even that is like masking really, because I always say to Zanny, like one day I'll do an episode of the BPD bunch unmasked, but I'm not sure people are ready for that yet.
I say this all the time. I wish situations like these or diagnoses like these, you could just take a blood test and be like, "Oh, you really are suffering," and like we could see it on your blood test here. That because then as you sound insincere when you're trying to convince other people that what you're going through. Oh my God, it's so frustrating.
And then the best bit is when people are like, "Oh, STPD, what's that?" I'm like, "Well, Willy Wonka and Jack Sparrow, right?" So it doesn't get any better from that.
It's funny, they're both Johnny Depp parts.
I know.
Maybe Johnny Depp does have.
Maybe, who knows? I mean, I'm on my own out here. Like, if anyone else is diagnosed, please let me know.
So what's your book about? Is it just kind of your experiences living with both these disorders?
Yeah, so the book is called Sorry, My Mental Illness Isn't Sexy Enough for You. And it's actually the title from the project that we run. So myself and my friend Kay, back in 2021, we set up a lived experience mental health project. And the website is called Lives Not Labels, but the personal story section is called Sorry, My Mental Illness Isn't Sexy Enough for You. And it's basically lived experience of the most stigmatized and misunderstood conditions. So things like personality disorders, psychotic conditions, dissociative disorders. And it was really to kind of showcase what it's like living with those kind of things every day, because you kind of see like really distorted versions of it in the media and things like that, whereas it wasn't really capturing the essence of what it's like for people who just live like essentially normal lives. So we set that up back in 2021, and the book kind of arose from that. So it's our stories, but it's the lessons that we've learned along the way. So it's interesting because myself and Kay both have diagnoses of borderline personality disorder and schizospectrum disorder. So STPD for me, schizophrenia for her. But in terms of being individuals, they're very, very different stories. So I have very low support needs. So I manage pretty well day to day, I think, just kind of muddling through, managing my disorders. For her, she actually wrote the book while she was under hospital section. So she was really poorly with psychosis, to the point where we had several discussions about whether it was the right thing to do for her to write the book, but she really wanted to tell her story. So we went through a process where she would write her chapter, send it to me, I would edit it and then send it back. So we were kind of waiting for periods of time where she was more aware of what was going on. So it did take quite a long time for the book to come together. But it's part self-help, part memoir. So it does tell our individual stories, our journeys, but also it kind of imparts a lot of advice that we've learned along the way, because I've had almost no professional support, whereas she's had quite a lot. So it's interesting to see both ends of the spectrum, really. So it was a bit of a challenge to write, to capture all of that lived experience, but I think it has come together really quite well.
How did you and Kay meet? Was it through the BPD bunch?
So she has appeared on an episode of the BPD bunch with me when we had our best friends on the show. So that was really lovely. We've actually known each other a really long time. So when we first met, we were in nursery, so we were 4 years old. We didn't have much to do with each other until we were in year 6. So like 11 years old when we sat next to each other in class. And we have been firm friends ever since. So yeah, coming up to like maybe 30 years. Wow, it's actually like really long. So yeah, we've known each other for a long time, like best friends all through high school, all through university, although we did have periods of time where we were sort of out of contact for various reasons. And when we wrote the book, it was quite a surprise really to kind of find out what had been going on, because we didn't know everything about each other. And when I got diagnosed with BPD and sort of went public with it, I was really shocked when she contacted me and said, actually, I've got that diagnosis. And I'm like, really? Because I tend to be quite quiet in terms of my presentation of BPD, but if I'm quiet, she's like silent. Like, I was so shocked. So yeah, it's been really lovely, because I feel like writing the book, although it was hard in places, it's nice to kind of reflect on the friendship as well and see how that's evolved, because mental illness puts such a pressure on your relationships. And actually for us, things haven't really ever changed. Like, we've only ever had one row over a boy when we were in high school. So yeah, like it's been really nice to kind of go back through the memories, even though it was hard at times.
Maybe this is contagious if you guys sat beside each other all through school.
Maybe. Like, it is really interesting how it's developed. I mean, she obviously has schizophrenia, whereas mine's STPD, so it's a little bit different. But it did lead to a lot of conversations around, especially our presentations of BPD, like whether it is just kind of a label that's slapped on people these days, whether it fits or not. Because, you know, like, I know the way I present with BPD, I really had to work to understand how it applied to me. But for a long time, I did think maybe it is a misdiagnosis, because I couldn't see myself in it. And actually, she went through exactly the same thing. So yeah, it did trigger like quite a lot of wider debate around sort of labels and things like that. So yeah, it feels very contemporary.
Well, everybody's so different in like nature versus nurture and all that stuff. You think about it, and yeah, even with my ADHD again, I suspected I had it, and then when I got diagnosed with it, I felt like almost like imposter syndrome. I'm like, no, I don't. Do I? Like, I'm just. It's so weird. Our brains are so weird. Yeah, and that's interesting that she had that same kind of feeling of misdiagnosis, even though she's on a different kind of part of the spectrum as you when it comes to these disorders. I think people are just inherently always questioning themselves for whatever reason. Did you find doing this book was kind of maybe not healing, but or more accepting of it and more, I don't know. What'd you learn writing the book?
So I feel like it kind of answered a lot of questions, because when you sit down to write a book, especially when a lot of it is in chronological order, I can now trace things back and see exactly why I've ended up the way that I have. Because when you've got everything together in a timeline, it's like, oh yeah, now it makes sense.
You see the patterns.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely pattern recognition. And I think it answered a lot of questions around why I have the diagnoses that I do. But then also by the end of it, I felt like I'd written so much about it and worked through so much of it that the labels actually kind of in some ways felt irrelevant, especially looking at all of the work that I've put in, because I haven't had that professional intervention. I have had to do a lot of it myself. I have had to go out there and actively find things that work and try it. And, you know, if it doesn't work, what am I going to do now? Like, I think I just kind of came to the end of the book and I was like, not only am I really tired, but also I kind of feel like I've written this book and I just worry that it doesn't come across as condescending, because I feel like I've kind of gone through the arc. So having the symptoms really impact on your life, not knowing what's wrong, getting that diagnosis, finding things that work, and then kind of getting through the other side and having a pretty decent quality of life. And I think when I got to the end, I was like, I really hope that people who are newly diagnosed with either BPD or STPD don't read this book and think it's not relatable, because when you're at the start of that journey, it's so hard to picture getting to the other side. And I say that as somebody whose presentation of BPD maybe hasn't impacted hugely severely on my life. But there are people out there who have got BPD to that degree. And I think that was always a concern, because having STPD and BPD, I never wanted it to be almost like a guide on how to get better from BPD, because I have two separate disorders. And I think if you're reading it as a roadmap to recovery from BPD, you are probably going to be a little bit disappointed, because I don't really have the extremity of BPD that a lot of people do. So I know when Zanny appeared on the podcast, she spoke about some of her past experiences. And on a personal level, I don't really relate to those, because my presentation is completely different. So I think it is just worth bearing in mind for people with BPD. If you are reading it as a guide on how to manage BPD, it might not meet your expectations fully. But again, the same for STPD as well. So I would say just treat it as a guide on how to achieve recovery as a whole rather than from specific disorders.
Well, I guess that's part of the beauty of taking so long to write it. You did go through all the phases of acceptance, really. It's more of a book about accepting your diagnosis and being more self-aware than it is treating it and curing yourself, which is just as important and just as valid as any other reason to write a book. It does take a lot of people a long time to come to terms with their diagnosis and to accept it. Maybe people might be disappointed for the reasons you said, but I think a lot of people also really like the book for different reasons that you haven't even thought of yet, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, there's so much that's covered in the book, like so many different topics, and we really wanted to kind of capture the fact that when you've got a mental illness and you're dealing with it on a day-to-day basis, it affects so many different aspects of your life, like in ways that you probably don't even realise. There's a whole chapter that I've written on working with a mental illness. And, I always thought I'd never really experienced stigma and discrimination with BPD. But when you go back and think about some of the experiences you've had, you're kind of like, actually, I have. I maybe didn't realise it at the time, but I have. And I always assumed, like, when we were first offered the book deal, I was like, what can I possibly offer to this conversation? Because all things considered, my experience hasn't really been that extreme. Like, I have quite a comfortable life, but when you unpick it, there's things underneath the surface that maybe I wasn't even fully aware of or fully conscious of that are just kind of like running as undercurrents that I've explored in the book. And the same for Kay as well. And actually, like a lot of stuff like stigma and discrimination is quite insidious. So there's definitely been an exploration of that in the book as well.
Can you give me a couple of examples where you looked back and you were like, wait a minute, now that I'm looking at it on paper, I think this was one of those moments?
Yeah, definitely. There's one that I mentioned in the work chapter when I was temping at a school not long after I had my diagnosis, and I needed time off for a psychiatric appointment. And in order to get that time off, you have to provide your letter from your consultant at the hospital. So I'd already declared that I got these disorders after I got the job. It seemed to be like no issue whatsoever. So I took a copy of this letter to the relevant people, said, I need this time off. Here is the proof of my appointment, and just kind of left it with them to authorise that time off. And later that day, I was teaching in the classroom. I had somebody come in and say, can you just step outside for 10 minutes while we speak to your class? So I was like, yeah, sure, like absolutely, not a problem. Went out, came back, and as I opened the door, I heard them say, do you feel safe in the classroom with your teacher? And I was like, that's a bit odd. So didn't really think anything of it, went in.
They ask all the kids this about every teacher.
Yeah. One of the students was like, it's so weird. Like, they kept asking, like, if we felt safe with you. And I was like, well, why would you not feel safe with me? Like, that's, like, not a thing. Like, if you didn't feel safe with me in the room, I wouldn't be teaching you. I kind of went home and sat on it on the evening. I was like, there's something just not right here at all. Like, I just felt really uneasy. So I went to my line manager the next day and explained what had happened. And fortunately for me, like, they took it really seriously. Like, they did investigate it. I never actually found out what happened with that, but even just that response that they were like, no, like, you're not blowing it out of proportion. We can see it's important to you, so we're going to support you. We're going to find out what's happened, you know, and like maybe it was just like a health and safety audit or something. I don't know, but it felt really targeted at the time. So even if it was legit, maybe they've changed the way that they conduct stuff like that. I hope so, because I went home thinking, what if these kids now think I'm going to murder them because people have been asking if they feel safe with me? So, I mean, especially when you've got paranoia as well, like your thought process just goes to the extreme.
So speaking with other people with borderline personality disorder in the United States and UK, is there other countries in the
Yeah. So
in the bunch?
I'm trying to think now. So yeah, we've got America, Canada, the UK,
Oh, we do have
India. Yeah, we've got, I think, Caris in Canada. I think there's somebody else as well. It's gone off the top of my head, but definitely Caris. And then we've also got, I think Solen's in Dubai maybe now. So yeah, like it's a pretty big spread. We've also had guests on from really far away. We had someone from, was it Kazakhstan? Yeah, I think maybe it was.
When you're speaking with these other people, do you guys ever compare the mental health systems in your countries? And if so, is there like any differences that you know of?
Yeah, so I think like the biggest difference is obviously in the UK we have the NHS, so all healthcare is publicly funded, which in theory is an amazing idea. Like it should work really well because everyone's paying into it, so everyone should get, you know, like equal treatment out of it. I definitely have to disagree just based on my own experiences. Although what I will say is when I was having treatment for my eating disorder, the NHS were absolutely fantastic. Like they were so good. But for personality disorders, I've never had anything, to the point where I got my STPD diagnosis provisionally through the NHS. I just could not find a way for them to confirm the diagnosis, which I really needed because I needed reasonable adjustments at work. So I had to have that diagnosis in writing. So I actually ended up having a private diagnosis of STPD. So it cost me an absolute fortune to get it privately. Like I had to borrow the money because the NHS just wouldn't give me a piece of paper saying you have STPD, even though the diagnosis was provisional. So they clearly knew that there was something awry. So yeah, like I would say that's probably the biggest difference. But if you read the book, you know, Kay's had loads of treatment on the NHS. She's had to fight for it, but it's there. For me, it's a bit different. And I would say in the UK, from what I've heard from a lot of people with PD diagnoses, it's an absolute postcode lottery in the UK. I think in the US and Canada, you guys have insurance, right? So it's a bit of a different, not in Canada.
Well, we have universal healthcare too, but we also have some private. Canada's a big country, so each province has their own healthcare system. It's not a national healthcare system. Yeah. So it depends where you live in Canada.
Yeah, I think it's probably similar for you guys, that it's literally just like throw the dice and it's a bit of a lottery there as well. Whereas I think in the US, like you get what you pay for, obviously. So yeah, that's been definitely the biggest thing that I would say. It really just depends on country to country. But even within a country, there's no saying that you'll get consistency of care.
How about like people's lived experience with stereotypes and discrimination? Is there a difference?
I would say in most English-speaking countries, it's getting better. I mean, it depends on your disorder. Like with BPD, arguably it's getting better. If you've got like NPD or ASPD, forget it. Like your reputation's tarnished. I would say from speaking to people across the world on the BPD bunch, especially in places like Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, there's still very much that stigma there. Yeah, so it does vary quite a lot. I think some places are a lot more progressive than others in terms of understanding and treatment of it. There are some countries that I think it's not even on the radar yet, and people are just being left without any treatment whatsoever, which is a massive shame. But then I also think with the ICD-11, like some places, especially Europe, are starting to move away from the personality disorder diagnosis as a whole. And they're kind of looking at a different way of categorizing things. So I know that in the ICD-11, they look at trait domains and descriptors rather than actually giving a full personality disorder label. I think it'll probably be quite a while until that really catches on, but there's a lot of debate at the moment about how you should categorize personality disorders, if you should categorize them at all, whether they're just natural responses to the environments that we're in, and that they shouldn't be pathologized, because actually within the context of the world that we're living in, they're understandable responses. So when you get into it, it's actually a really, really interesting debate, and there's so much out there that you can read on it. So I would always say to anyone who's got a PD diagnosis, read as widely as you can to kind of understand the current debates at the moment. So yeah, things are moving forward really quite quickly, I think, in that field.
So with your book, where can people find it, or your podcast, or whatever you want people to go to?
Sure. So I actually have a copy of the book with me now. So it looks like this. You can get it on Amazon. It's also available via our publisher, which is JKP Publishing. It's due out on the 21st of October in the UK. So it will probably take a little bit longer in North America. And I know that it's probably around January time for Australia, New Zealand, and that part of the world. But yeah, it will be with people imminently. If you want to check us out, we're at Lives Not Labels on Instagram. We've got the website, livesnotlabels.com. You can also find me at the BPD Bunch as well, with Zanny and the rest of the cast. We've got the YouTube channel for the BPD Bunch. So yeah, I'm kind of omnipresent, really. I'm everywhere, thanks to the BPD Bunch. But yeah, I would say Lives Not Labels is our project, and then obviously the BPD Bunch is the podcast that I'm part of.
Thank you so much, Katja. Thank you for sharing your story and writing this book with your friend and doing the work you do with the PBD Bunch. Like I said, you can check out the show notes for more information on Katja. If you listen to this podcast, if you like my guests, please go to Apple Podcasts on your phone and please rate and review. It literally takes a few seconds, and I can't begin to tell you how important that is for podcasters. Not just me, whatever podcast you like, please do that. Please keep listening. I've got more incredible guests coming up. So until next time, also, please remember to make your beds and take your meds. Bye.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.